Okay, gentlemen, I'm going to show you how to cheat on reading how to read a tape measure. So I'm going to try to break this down as freaking easy as possible. So, okay, here we go. For a tape measure, you only got to know four things. There's only four ways a tape measure is divided up. And that is going to be, they're divided in halves, okay? Halves. They're divided into quarters. They're divided in eighths. And they're divided in sixteenths. So that's it. You only got to remember half, fourth, eighth, sixteenths. All you got to remember. There's four things. You don't have to know fifths, sevenths, ninths. You know, just these four things. If it's not a half, a quarter, an eighth, or 16th,
Y no te tienes que decir que tienes que ir, que porque tú no tienes trabajo. Que te esperaban lunes, ayer y martes y no fuiste.
Okay, so what we do is this is how you're going to draw a cheat sheet for a tape measure. Okay, all you got to do, come down here and draw something like this. Everybody can do that. You just draw one of those. You put 0 here. Remember, these two little lines mean inches. And then you put 1 over here. So this is 0 inches and 1 inch. Now, first thing we're going to do, we're going to come over here. We're going to do our halves, okay? Can you guys all see that? Yeah, you can see that. You're going to do our halves. So we're going to come over here and we're just going to divide this in half, okay? Now this line here cannot be as tall as these lines. It has to be shorter, okay? Because every time you break your inch down into a smaller piece, your line gets shorter. That is how it is on the tape measure. Thank you, Jip. Okay. I'll get back to you. I'm in the middle of a...
This is my philosophical talk.
Oh, okay. So every time you break a tape measure down into a smaller part, the line gets smaller. Like we'll show you here real quick on a typical tape measure. So right there, you guys can see we've drawn this line right here is the next tallest one after the big ones, after the whole numbers. So this would be 5. This is halfway, it'd be 5.5. All right. So, and you notice your next numbers, they're going to get smaller. So these will be fourths, eighths, and the tiny ones are sixteenths. So let's go back to our board. So I'm showing you how it really is on a tape measure. I'm not like making up some kind of weird thing that you never use. So, well, this is going to be 1/2, all right? This would be 1/2 right here. 1/2 of an inch, all right? So, that's done. That's super easy. I know everybody can do that. I mean, that's, okay. I know you can do this next one. Fourths. So fourths means we got to divide this up into 4 parts. So again, we'll take this, we'll divide it in half, okay? Notice this line is smaller than this line, okay? Because we're dividing it up into smaller parts. Because 4 parts of an inch are smaller than 2 parts of an inch, you know, 1/2 and 1/2. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 parts. So these are, we're doing our fourths. Divide that up. And so this is the very first one. This is going to be 1/4 of an inch. And then you count this one, this is going to be 2/4 of an inch. But you call it a 1/2 inch, but it is the same as 2/4. This is 3/4. And then 4/4 is obviously 4 into 4 is going to be 1. So now any line that is this tall is going to be called a fourth. Any line that this tall is going to be a half. You only have one of those in every inch. You only have 1/2 inch in every inch. And you only have 2/4 in every inch. You have this fourth there, you have this fourth here, okay? Because this one's called a half. So anyway, starting here, you have a 1/2 inch to 1 inch. You have a 1/4 inch, 2/4, which is the same as a half, 3/4, and an inch. Okay, so we've done those. Those are done. Boom. Okay, simple enough. Now we're going to break it down to eighths. All right. So again, we're going to do the same thing we did before. We're going to come over here and divide this in half again. In half, in half, in half, and in half. So that gives us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 parts. All right. So since this is the first one of the 8 parts, we're going to call this 1/8. This is that we have 1/8 here, from here to here, 1/8. We're going to go another one. This means this is going to be 2/8. But in real life, you're going to call it a 1/4, okay? But a 1/4 and 2/8 is the same thing. This is good to know because if anybody asks you, well, what's a 1/4 minus an 1/8? If you already know in your head that a 1/4 is the same as 2/8, and you know, if you take 1/8 away from 2/8, you come up with this, you know, you subtract this and you back at 1/8. So it's good to know both of these numbers. But anyway, starting again, 1/8, 2/8, here we go, 3/8, 4/8, 5/8, 6/8, 7/8, and obviously 8/8. 8 into 8 is going to be 1. So now, if you look at your board, you've only got 1/2 right here, and then you have a 1/4, and you have your 3/4, okay? Because this one's called a half, and then you have 1, 2, 3. You have 4 lines that are called eighths, but this would be 1/8, and then this would be 2/8, but you call it a 1/4, 3/8, 4/8, but you call it a half, okay? So this is what all these are going to be called, okay? A 1/8, 2/8, same as a 1/4, 3/8, 4/8, same as a half, 5/8, 6/8, same as 3/4, 7/8, and 8/8, which is your whole number. So now we got our eighths done, okay? Super easy. You just divide it in half, right? Into 8 parts. There we divide our quarters into a half to get 8 parts. There, there, and there. So now we got our 16ths. Again, same thing as we did. Gonna come over here, a smaller line. Okay, so you put a smaller line in here, you divide all these in half again. So if you look, this is the smallest line there's going to be on a tape measure. Unless you get a fancy one, you know, the first 1 inch, sometimes in 30 seconds. But generally speaking, tape measure, this is as small as they go. If you're working in construction, if you're within a 1/16 of an inch, you're pretty dang close. So it's close enough. Get into machining and stuff, yeah, that's another story. Anyway, long story short, we've divided all of these into the whole inch into 16 parts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Okay, now, so we know the first one is going to be 1/16. 1/16. Then we know our second one is going to be 2/16. But we're going to call it an eighth because it's the same thing. Now you count this one, 3/16. 4/16, 5/16, 6/16. Again, 16ths, we're going to call it by this number here because of the height of the line. So you can always, when you look at a tape measure, you're always going to want to look like how big the line is. If it's the tiniest one, you're going to call it by a 16th, okay? The tallest one is going to be a half. And then the next tallest one is going to be quarters. The next tallest one will be an eighth, and the tiniest one will be a 16th. So the height of the lines mean things. So we're at 6/16, 7/16, obviously 8/16 because 8 is half of 16. And since 8 is half of 16, that's why you call it a half. 9/16, because it'd be 8/16, you count one more, 9/16, count one more, 10/16. Which you call 5/8 because it's the size of the line. But it's 10/16 and 5/8 the same number, but you call it 5/8. So since that's 10/16, this will be 11/16. This will be 12/16. I think somebody's at my door. Oh, thank you.
There you go.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
12/16 and okay, 3/4. We're going to call that 3/4. Okay. But it's the same as 12/16. Add one more, 13/16, 14/16. Call that 7/8 because of the size of the line. 15/16. And then obviously 16/16 equals 1. So there you go. You got your 16ths out of the way. So there is your inch right there. There's your cheat sheet. You could draw one of these just like I did. You just draw 0 to 1, divide it in half, and that's your half. Cross that one off. Okay. Probably the first thing you want to start with is write down a half, quarter, eighth, 16ths. So draw your deal, divide it in half, that's your half. Divide it in half again, that's your quarters. You got 4 of those. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then divide it in half again. That's how you get your eighths. Okay, you get 8 parts. Divide it in half again, and that's how you get your 16 parts. So, gentlemen, that is how a tape measure works. Okay, we'll look. Let's look at our tape measure right now. So you can see the lines I have on here on your tape measure is the same thing that I just drew on the board. Get my autofocus going. So there's your half right there in the center. Okay, that's the biggest line. The smaller line will be from that one is going to be this one. So that means that's always going to be a quarter. So whenever you land on a line, you're going to want to know, like, what size is the line? There's only 4 different sizes. There's a 1/2 inch size, a 1/4 inch size, an 1/8 of an inch size, and a 1/16 of an inch. So there's only 4 different sizes. So if you point to something, I know that's a 1/4, I know that's a 1/2, I know that's an 1/8, I know that's a 1/16. No matter where I am, before you decide like how many of something you got, figure out if you're looking at halves, okay, if you're looking at quarters, or if you're looking at eighths, or if you're looking at 16ths. So if you're looking at 16ths, you count every line because there's 16 lines going through here, all right? So this would be a 1/16, a 2/16, a 3/16, a 4/16, 5, all the way through. If you're looking at quarters, this is, or if you're looking at eighths, this will be the first eighth. That's going to be 1/8, right? Because of the first one. And then you're going to count every single line that is this tall or taller. That's important. Has to be this tall or taller, because that'll make this 1/8, that'll make that 2/8, okay? Which you really call a quarter because the line is bigger, but you count it anyway if you're counting eighths. That'll be 1/8, 2/8, that'll be 3/8, 4/8, 5/8, 6/8, 7/8, 8/8, okay? And then your next biggest line, you don't count this one, you don't count this one, because this is the next biggest one. That's going to be a quarter. That size is a quarter. That's 1/4, 2/4, which you call a half, 3/4 or 3/4, the same thing, and then 4/4. So it'd be 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4. And the half is easy. Everybody should know your half. So there it all is on the tape measure. And I'll give you some tricks if you're really picking this up really good right now. For instance, if you come to a half, you know a half is the same as 2/4. So if you go one more than a half, one more fourth than a half, you know that's 3/4. You also know a half is 8/16. I'm sorry, 4/8. You already know a half is the same as 4/8. So if you go 1/8, this line is an eighth line. If you go 1/8 past a half, you already know half is the same as 4/8. You know that'll be 5/8. And then we know that a half is the same as 8/16. So if we go a tiny line, you know, if it's a tiny line, it's always a 16th. If you go 1/16 over a half, which you already know is 8/16, that'll make that 9/16. So it's easy, instead of having to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, you already know that 1/2 is the same as 8/16. So that would make that 9/16. So you wouldn't have to count from the beginning. You can do the same thing going backwards. You know, 11 is the same as 16/16. So one little line less is going to be 15/16. And then two lines less is going to be 14/16, and then 13/16, you know, and 12/16. So you can go backwards too. The same with the eighths. You know that 11 is the same as 8/8. So you know that's an eighth line right there. So that's going to be 1/8 less than 8/8. So it'll be 7/8. And then since you count every line this tall or bigger, you know that if this is 8/8, this will be 7/8, that'll be 6/8, okay? 6/8 and then 5/8. So you, and this is also, you know, half is 4/8, so you count one more and that's 5/8. So you can go forwards and backwards on here, so you don't have to start at 1 and count all the way up. I'm just showing you some real quick tricks. So, but remember, the tallest one is a half. That's what it's called. Your next tallest ones are quarters, okay? That's what they're called. These size lines are called eighths, you know, and the tiniest ones are 16ths. So anyway, hopefully that'll get you going. We'll do some practice problems right now. Yeah, let's do some practice problems right now.